All right. Hey, how are you?
Good.
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good.
That's good. That's good. We've got a very special episode today. Finally, we have arrived at episode 17. Yes. Welcome to The Harvest, episode 17, where we discuss everything cinema and story. And as we learn, you learn. As we grow, you grow. My name is Xavier Garcia.
And I'm Jonathan Garcia.
And today we've got a special guest behind us. Joining us via video chat from Colorado is composer James G Lindsey. How are you, James?
Good. How are you guys doing? Good morning.
Good.
Fantastic. Good morning, man. James is actually based out of New York City, where he's been composing music and championed by some of the country's most distinguished artists, including the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. He holds degrees in music performance and composition from the Boston Conservatory at Berklee, New York University, and the Mannes College of Music. He's created a number of compositions and film scores, including the score for our award-winning short film,
Yes.
A Blood Throne.
Yes.
It's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the Harvest podcast, James.
Likewise. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Colorado, I see the wilderness
Yes.
behind you.
Yeah.
We're escaping the city for a little while with all the craziness going on, and it's a nice change of pace.
Yeah,
Can't complain.
Are the animals
Fresh
keeping
air.
to COVID? Are they wearing masks out there? No.
People are actually taking a lot of precautions out here. Honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
You can't even go into the supermarket without your mask and whatnot.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a good time to kind of refresh your mind and get
some
away.
fresh air.
Yeah.
Yeah, get out into the wilderness.
Absolutely. Inspiration.
Awesome. Well, we've got a pretty lengthy episode today, and I know we've got some pretty fantastic breakdowns of some of your music to go through, and so I think we should just jump in. I think the audience kind of wants to know a little bit about you, James. When did you begin pursuing music as a talent? Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into all of this?
Well, growing up, music was around me. Music was in my family. Both my grandmothers played piano at church. So I grew up with the piano around. My uncles took lessons and they played some classical, some Beethoven, Moonlight Sonata, the usual suspects, things like that. But it didn't really, I never had a desire to do it myself until I was a little older. When I was younger, I was more into sports and things like that. And then when I was like 13 or 14, I remember my cousin was taking piano lessons and he played this little piece that I thought was beautiful and really moved me. And it was really a life-changing moment, actually. I went home and found some old tapes at the time of classical music and of Beethoven in particular. And I just remember being profoundly moved by the music. And it was almost like an instantaneous thing. Like I knew this is what I had to do. Like this was...
You don't by any chance remember what that song was, do you?
It was actually from Beethoven's 7th Symphony. Yeah, the slow movement.
Oh.
Check it out if you're not familiar with it. Yeah, it's
We'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, maybe
Cool.
we can inspire others the same way you were inspired.
Yeah, so at that point, my life, I became obsessed. Like my life was just taken over. Like I stopped. I quit my baseball team. I quit my soccer team.
Wow.
And I practiced 6 hours a day. I just.
It was that big. It was that big of a change and a trans. I mean, it impacted you that much that you just kind of quit everything to pursue it, huh?
Yeah, and I never looked back. So.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So, at what point now did you go from just because you started practicing, you became impassioned about it, you were pursuing it, and at this point, I'm assuming because it's still on a personal level. At what point did you say, okay, this is going to college, gonna follow it to the highest degree, I'm gonna make it my job and my occupation? Because there's a lot of people that although are passionate about music and are excellent musicians, never take it into this is also what I'm going to do for a living. What led you to make that choice?
Right, I guess a couple of things. I was fortunate to find a great piano teacher when I was young, who lived in Salem, Massachusetts. His name was Paul Scanzani. And he really encouraged me to pursue this and helped me get ready for my college auditions, my college audition at Boston Conservatory and things like that, which, I was kind of clueless about. So he walked me through it. He believed in me. So I think that's a huge thing to have, a mentor or
Yeah.
somebody that, especially when you're a young person.
Yeah.
And also, what just came to mind is, Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. He says, if you ask yourself, can I possibly live without this? And if the answer is no, I can't, then you have to do it. And that will guide you through life. And it's something, if you, as you guys know, if you pursue an art form, it's very unpredictable. You don't know, you just kind of little by little kind of follow like the light that's shed into your path little by little and follow it wherever it takes you. And that's part of the adventure.
Yeah.
So I decided to go on that adventure.
That's amazing. I can't imagine. Like for instance, I know for us, you start thinking about the art form. My uncle was in art, and you start asking yourself, can you make a living off that? Can you live off of that? And I wonder what your family said when you were like, I'm gonna pursue music. And they're like, oh, okay, you're gonna be a musician, like on concert, you're gonna go live. Like, no, I'm gonna compose, I'm gonna do orchestra. And
Yeah,
today
it's tough
like,
for an artist.
Like where is the opportunity that today? Like
until like mom and dad is like, no, you're gonna be a lawyer, you're gonna be a doctor. It's like, I'm gonna play music.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, how do you convince?
Like, how were you able to articulate to your family that this is my passion and these are the ways that I can make a living off of it?
Yeah, it's definitely not every parent's dream that their kid walks in one day and is like, I'm going to be a musician, right? I mean, it's a tough thing, I guess. I was very fortunate. My parents encouraged me and saw that I was passionate, and they never once tried to have me change my mind or consider something else. So I'm really thankful for that, actually.
That's good.
The world is thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm serious. I mean, I could go on for days about just personal stories of individuals that were impacted. Just talking about a Blood Throne alone, that individuals that were impacted and their greatest takeaway was how they were moved by the score and how they were moved by the music. Like, I'm talking life-changing situations from people that are, close to me, near and dear and personal, that I know their stories are true, that they listened to a song and it changed their outlook on life. I mean, I'm talking like father-son relationships restored, things like that. It's powerful. So the world is blessed to know, to have you as a musician. So
yeah, that's very kind of you. Well, that's the power of art, right? Film, literature, music. I mean, these things all have life-changing potential, I feel like. So if you feel the calling, if you feel like you can't live without it, I think it's kind of your duty to follow that path.
Yeah. So now tell us a little bit about what transitioned you from some of the orchestral work that you're doing into scoring film.
Right?
Because that's a definite path.
Yeah. Well, I began my studies with studying piano performance, and composition was always there, kind of bubbling within me. I just wasn't sure didn't have the tools yet to begin really composing on my own. And when I went to NYU, I studied with Seymour Bernstein, which I don't know if you guys have seen this documentary, Seymour: An Introduction. It's Ethan Hawke's first film, and it's a documentary on my piano teacher, Seymour Bernstein. It's really incredible. It's really inspirational. So check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But he began to inspire me to compose again while I was studying piano with him, and to think like a composer. So I began to, dip my toe into the waters of it, and it just gave me more fulfillment than just performance alone. And again, I had a kind of paradigm shift where I was like, this is what I have to do,
Awesome.
kind of. But without studying piano first, I don't think it would have been possible. I think it's very important to really learn your craft and to learn an instrument before you dive into that.
So talk us a little bit through just kind of your first experience composing a film, your first project or one of your earlier projects. How did that go?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was at Manus, I was studying composition with Lowell Lieberman, and one of the classes was scoring for film, and that was actually with Michael Bacon. And that was when I really got into film scoring. And through a friend, I met a director who was making her first documentary, and she asked me to do the music for it, and I was like, let's do it. And it was kind of like perfect timing because I was taking this class, film scoring class, and I had the studio all set up. Basically, we could use for free. So I, had musician friends come in and began scoring, and it was really a good experience. And I was like, this is awesome. This is, it's a, and then the film was actually at the Doc NYC Film Festival. So I got to hear the score like in surround sound in the theater, and I was like, okay,
I'm hooked.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, I love this. So
that's awesome. So can I ask you because there's in the film world, there's this one question that goes around, and everybody asks, is it worth it to go? Because you came from a very traditional schooled background,
Right.
and in the film world, everyone asks, should I go to film school or should I go through the school of hard knocks? How do you feel about it from a musician's perspective? Was the fact that you went through school helpful? Was it hurtful? Are you inundated in student debt? Talk us through how do you believe it can be done, or maybe it could be done both ways, or talk us through your ideology. Music school or no music school?
Well, yeah, the student debt is a problem
for
everyone, I guess. Yeah, for all of us, especially with the financial uncertainty of the future of an artist. But
right,
that's a whole other topic.
It is.
But I mean, I wouldn't change the experience for anything. I think for me it was extremely important to learn the craft, to be around other like-minded people, to be around the professors and the teachers that have made a living at this, and to what you learn from them is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend it. And again, it's all about craft at the end of the day, and you can be very talented and make it, or find your voice or whatever, but it's so important to study what came before you and to learn from the great masters. I'm a classical musician.
Absolutely.
So for me it's like where would I be without Bach, Beethoven, Chopin? Studying their music gave me so much. I suppose it's like if you're a writer, like you study Shakespeare, you read Shakespeare,
Absolutely.
These things are timeless for a reason. They're still around for a reason, and it's worth investigating, especially if you want to get into that field.
Yeah, I found going to art school, and I'm sure this relates to you, James, is you build early confidence before you go onto the field, because the teachers who have made it are confirming your quality. Everyone in the art school is talented. Everyone is talented. Everyone has some sort of gift, creativity, uniqueness about them. But when you go to school, it's like you are approved. You are being said that works in the industry, that doesn't work in the industry. And I think that's what he's saying is like you build that confidence going. So when you go out, you have some sort of foundation, and you've learned that that the fundamentals that you have, and you also know the business world.
Yeah.
Sometimes you walk out of some schools, because I hear it all the time. They're like, I didn't learn anything.
I
didn't
learn
the business
I just
world.
wasted 4 years.
Exactly.
I was in a big haze for 4 years.
But that's a lot of times that's on the individual trying
true.
to find all the assets that are available in the school.
And I think from film school's perspective, and this could apply to music as well. I think you're given 4 years to kind of find yourself, to play, to in a safe environment where you're not yet in the business world, you're not yet being torn apart for what you're putting out there, because you're still in this protective film school space in place, and you're able to kind of find your voice, if you will, and experiment and put out some student films that no one is going to like crucify you for if they're terrible, or some student composition or student work that no one's going to say, oh well, this is it, this is all they're capable of. It's like, no, it was in film school, and you had 4 years of collaboration, 4 years of being critiqued, like you were saying, 4 years of just experimentation. So it could be both ways.
I love what you just said. You have the freedom to experiment, to find your voice, sort of. I also, two more things about that. I also think that it's important to be kind of initiated, so to speak, into the culture of what you're doing.
Interesting.
So you learn how to speak like a filmmaker. You learn how to speak like a musician. I'm sure you guys know right away, if you meet someone who says, oh, I want to be a filmmaker, and you begin to talk to them, and they don't know what you're saying, or they don't know the lingo or the speech of it, it's a problem.
Initiated into that culture. I never thought of it that way.
So that's a big one. And it also gives you a chance to fail, right? Like, you're in school, you're kind of in a bubble, like you're kind of in a safe place. You can experiment, like you said, you can find your voice, and you can fail. And it's not the end of the world, and it's not costing you money yet.
So let's shift gears here. Let's kind of I want to know a little bit about your compositions and your creative process. The world wants to know,
how do you do,
and you don't have to give any major James G Lindsey secrets, but I mean, a lot of our viewers are individuals that are, trying to find ways to doing this, as their 9 to 5, and hearing from individuals that are doing that and are doing it successfully at the highest level is great. And so any insight that they can glean from you as far as process would be really cool.
I don't know if there's any real secrets.
Yes, you have a secret sauce. What is it?
The secret sauce. One big deal is to have a deadline. Because it kind of forces you to kind of zone in and focus. And without a deadline, you can kind of get lost in this kind of like ocean of creativity and kind of lose direction, I feel like. But when there's a hard deadline, it's like, okay, this is the idea, I'm going for it. And that's how I get most of my work done.
Pressure. Having the pressure of a director or a producer breathing down your neck.
Look who I'm talking to. You guys. And
James, I need it yesterday.
Exactly.
Well, they actors have a way of getting involved in their role. They call it the method. They go out. We were actually joking about this just before we started. Like you're out you're out in Colorado. You're out there in your alone time, and you're having this major experience on, to try to get focus. Is that similar to a composer? Like, is there a method? Is there something where, I need to play some cymbals or I need complete silence so that I can hear hums, or like, what, is there a technique that kind of gets you to begin the process of what the director is asking of you?
Absolutely. Well, for me, absolutely. I try to immerse myself in the film and, the time period, or, what was happening around where the action is taking place. But another thing that helps me work is inspiration from other art forms. So I'm always going to museums. I'm always...
That's right. You took us one. You took us to one, didn't you? And we
when you came to visit.
It was a part of our. It was a part of our exploratory process,
awesome.
Actually, which was really cool. Just getting into the mindset of a blood tone. You took us to the contemporary. What was it?
Did we go to MoMA or the Met?
I think it was MoMA. MoMA.
Yeah.
We went to MoMA, I think. Yeah.
And we got an opportunity to just kind of peruse through and just talk art and just talk visual inspiration and talk storytelling, and that's when I was like, he's the guy. It's him. I mean, he's seeing art, he's seeing story just beyond what is on the page. I mean, you're finding it all around you, and you're allowing all of it to inspire you in your writing, in your creation, in your ideation. And that to me is like, that's a hallmark of a true creative, that can find the mundane and make art out of it.
I would love, and this is a little side thing. I mean, if you do this is amazing, but just came to me. I would love for you to do a composition for your favorite art pieces at the MoMA. Like, cool look, because I remember watching you, and you were looking at them, and like you were like, I need to stay here for a minute. I was like, all right, stay there for a minute. And I knew that you were feeling the art in it, and I was like, I bet he's got a song for that. I bet you have something that you can hear.
There's an emotion.
There's an emotion. Yeah. And I would love, I don't know if you have the time during COVID, but I would love to be like, this is what I hear when I see Dali's, I don't know, what was the one that we ended up watching? But looking at one of those art pieces,
it would make for a great performance art.
My goodness,
like he stands.
I see it. I feel it. I hear it.
He sets up into sets up in front of some Frida Kahlo painting, and then pulls out pulls out his piano and just starts playing.
Watch,
in the middle of the museum.
That'll be like some YouTube channel you can start.
It's gonna happen. Someone's gonna do it now. It better be you. You'll be a viral sensation. No, but I love that, and I do love that about you. And like I said prior to it, it is the hallmark of a true creative, someone that can find, story in the mundane, in anything,
Well, and I think that's kind of the beauty of film. You're incorporating, all these art forms, together to make this great work of art that, or potentially at least, right, that can move people on many levels. Which is incredible. So I feel like film is one of the highest, or it does pull together all these other disciplines in a really unique way.
It does. Talking about a little bit, just digging deep into your process too, because I love how Jonathan compared it to the actor's process, and although it's just completely different disciplines, both the actor and the composer are creating, and they're creating story, they're creating emotion, and they're delivering. And there is a process that each one goes through in order to get into that zone, into that place. And when you sit down in front of your piano, or you sit down in front of your computer, and you're about to lay that first key and that first note down, and and just maybe even. Are there, when you engage that process and when you begin that process, are there artists and musicians that you look to that perhaps you use as inspiration, or is it dependent upon the film, dependent upon the time? What gets you to write that first note? You know what I mean? And I know that's that's a deep topic, and I'm sure there's like a million different influences upon that. But if you could talk about maybe one or two that you find yourself often going to, and saying, okay, you know what, whenever, right before I have to write that first note, I always, I need my cup of coffee, and then once I've got that in me, I need to listen to, I don't know if there is a formula for you. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there isn't a formula.
The cup of coffee goes without saying. I mean, Beethoven was a well-documented coffee addict.
Yeah, he was.
That's a big thing. Now, I think improvisation is very important. To be free, to be open, to be playful in the beginning stages. So I'll just sit at the piano and just play the piano.
Yeah.
Improvise on the theme or the subject of the film, and an idea through that play, through that improvisation. Usually, suddenly an idea or a motif will pop out. And I'll be like, ooh, and I'll jot it down, and then I'll just continue. And as these ideas kind of bubble up, and they kind of, I feel like there's a seed that could possibly be planted and work. I'll jot it down, and I would imagine that actors maybe have a similar approach, like they're getting into the character and they're just being playful and trying to talk like the character and trying to, again, kind of back to the method acting approach. So instead of putting that kind of pressure on yourself to be like, what's my first note going to be? What key am I going to be in? How am I going to structure this? Throw all that aside, put all that aside, and just play and improvise.
I love that.
And record yourself or jot down whatever ideas pop up. And then let it go and come to it the next day and go over your ideas, and maybe 2 or 3 will stand out and you throw out the rest, and you kind of narrow it down and like, okay, this is it. Now I can build. And then you start the hard work of building.
Talk a little bit about just in that creative process, the collaboration with with the director, for example.
Yes.
How much of that also plays into it?
Well, I personally feel like I've been very fortunate to work with directors that have been super supportive and open-minded, which is great. I guess it's a fine line because, as you know, a composer, or I would imagine an actor, you want to be true to yourself, but you also, you know, want the directors to be happy, obviously.
Yeah.
And you want to, so you have to have a lot of empathy, I guess, to try to put yourself into the headset of the director and what they're trying to, the message they're trying to get across, and what they're trying to say with this work. And they've put hours and hours and hours of labor into this, and you want to support it and elevate it. So you have to listen, I guess, to really listen to what the directors are saying to you. Oftentimes directors don't really, like we talked about, that initiating into the initiation of language, right?
Right.
So you have to kind of put that aside and try to, you know, see what are they trying to, what's the heart of the matter?
Right.
You know, what do they want? Like, what's the feeling they're going for?
Yeah.
And
put aside all the technical jargon, all the eighth note, this, that, you know, you want to crescendo here up, and put that aside and just get to like, what is the emotion that you're trying to elicit?
Exactly. And when you start to touch on that, it's a really amazing moment. And I think we shared that.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you get really excited and you feel like, okay, we're here, like we're reaching it, we're getting there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a hum that starts. And, you know,
then,
feel the vibration.
Do you feel like that happens more so like as you learn the director more and there's more of a relationship? Like some of the greatest scores that that are coming out are now coming out of, you know, long-standing relationships. Like you've got, for example, Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan, you know, and as you listen to the progression of his scores, they get better and better and better as the two of them work together more and more. It's like almost they're sharing a brain, you know. And now you've got, you know, you've got like the Interstellar score, which was just this, you know, just like breaths of this like organ, and I don't know if you look at some of the behind the scenes, it's like they were like finishing each other's sentences about how they feel like the story should be told. You know, does that happen with is that something that's kind of known in the industry? Does that happen across the board, or is this just something that they specially share?
No, I think this is absolutely something that does happen. It's sort of marriage, right?
Yeah.
Between minds and creative spirits, I guess. And you see it all over, and it's something that's always been around, I feel like. You know, there's countless examples of directors and film composers that, you know, started working together and went through their whole careers. Obviously, you know, John Williams and Steven Spielberg. And, Tim Burton and Danny Elfman.
Yes.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Because when you do find that, you know, that kind of relationship, why let it go?
Right. Right. Because you're communicating something that's beyond just notes, you know, and the composer is reaching a level and a space and a place where the filmmaker can't with the visual.
Yeah, it's like as if both of them together created a language. And in their music, they know that when they hit that key, that's what this word means, or that's what this is saying. And I think that when they hear those sounds, they are having conversations with one another, and they know exactly what it's supposed to say.
Yeah,
it's that awesome. And I think that that's something even I know that you guys shared, James. We were discussing. I know, when we were kind of brainstorming, we were talking about like those spiritual sounds and spiritual things, and we instantly got excited and feeling, you know, the instruments. He was suggesting instruments, I remember, and the things he wanted to add, and you really do you get to the detail of the instrument, you get to the detail of the sounds and the keys to try to say something.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
This is actually a really awesome jump off point to get into some compositions. How do we feel about that, James?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can walk the audience through just some of your tracks. I mean, we actually have here the breakdown, all of the stems for Blood Throne's epilogue, the prologue track, the opening track that enters and gives you the mood of the film, and it tells you just kind of like what it is that we're dealing with. We have that track, but we also have the breakdown of that track. And James, can you talk us through this?
Yeah, I think that would be fun. We'll just not necessarily go through every single stem, but we'll go through some, and we can talk about why we use certain sounds and things like that.
Sure. So where do you want to begin? You want to begin with the choir?
No, let's begin with, so let's talk about, what this scene is, this opening scene.
Let's do that, yeah.
So why don't you describe that?
Okay, so in this prologue, you've got soldiers that are arriving into Bethlehem. It's the actual massacre of the innocents. You've got one of our lead actors that is, this soldier that's kind of leading in the breakdown, the teardown of the homes as the soldiers are going house by house trying to find children that fit the description of this prophesied Messiah. And at that point, all that they have is a date, and so they know that the child must be 2 years of age or under, and anyone that fits that description of a male child 2 years of age or under is being ripped from their parents and being thrown into a massive fire. And they're going from home to home to home in this village doing this. And we zero in on one specific home, and it's the home of Rebecca. She's briefly mentioned in scripture. It says that, in Ramah, her voice was heard crying for her children. And so we take and allegorize that moment. Yeah. And we see this heartless soldier just kind of getting off his steed, watching this unfold, and he's going to come up later to report how things went in this little city, or this little town, village, if you will, where these children were massacred. And so there's fire, there are horses, there are soldiers that are kind of running into the scene, unsheathing swords. They're running into the space and into the moment, into the house, in order to basically rip a child away from a screaming mother. That's kind of the opening prologue.
Very intense.
Yes. Yes.
Very intense. Very dark moment in history. On many levels, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely. Well, let's get into the tracks, and
yeah.
I can tell you what I was thinking. Why don't we hear the
Let's
drone?
hear the whole thing. The drone.
Why don't we hear the drone track stem first?
Got it.
So this is just kind of underlying. This is kind of like the bedrock of the overall track, and I liked this because I felt like it captured this kind of otherworldly darkness that was kind of happening during this event. So you can play that whenever.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so you can hear this kind of almost wailing, right? Like it's this kind of otherworldly vibe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like a dark cloud is coming,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Which is kind of exactly what is happening at that moment, right?
Yeah.
Or what you guys are setting up.
It literally sounds to me like, when I listen to that, like the earth is moaning, like the earth is crying. Like, the spilt blood that is seeping into it's kind of like, when God turns to Cain, and he says, the blood of your brother cries out from the soil. It has that feeling to it, like the blood of these children are crying out from the soil. Like, I loved that. When I heard that, I was like, oh man, this is it. Like, the earth is crying. That's
yes,
cool.
yes. So that's kind of like, okay, that's like one layer, right? That's happening throughout the track. Let's check out the drums real quick. We won't take too long with these, but I wanted to create a sense of urgency, and I wanted to create a sense of like a feeling of movement, because a lot of the prologue is you're reading the story, right? You're setting up, the audience is reading.
Yeah.
There's not so much movement happening. So I thought it was a great chance for the music to kind of fill in that gap and create a sense of movement and create a sense of urgency. So the drums were important. Drum number 1 has like a kind of intense focus and is like kind of open and vast, kind of like enveloping. Let's hear it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, just a few seconds is fine. So that's the first layer of drum. And then drum 2, let's check out that one. A bit more distant and like more eerie, kind of like.
Yeah. It almost sounds like a heartbeat, you know?
Yes.
Kind of
yes.
adding a little bit of that, that ticking time bomb effect to it. Like something is something is coming, something is happening, the heart kind of bursting out of the chest.
Which ultimately, that's what, percussion is all about, right? Like, kind of mimicking a heartbeat. It gets faster, we get excited. It gets slower, we calm down. Like that's the rhythmic and percussive sections in a piece of music really have a big part of affecting the audience and how, if they're getting excited about something or if they're calming down and getting more meditative. Right?
Absolutely. It causes for like an anxiety even at times, as you're listening. It's almost controlling your heart pace. It's controlling how you're breathing and how you're receiving it. It's like, okay, or I can breathe.
And it's often on like an unconscious level. Like we're not even sure why we're.
Well, hopefully it is, right? Because like that's the hallmark of a great score where it's it's not like, hey, look, I'm here, awesome drums. It's like you're watching and somehow you're being manipulated and moved to feel a certain way. Yeah.
Yes, it is a lot about manipulation, actually.
Yeah, it really is.
In the best sense of the word, I guess.
Right.
Drum 3, which will be the last one we check out, is more upfront and present and like more physical. I think that starts at 7 seconds in. Yeah. So a little more harrowing, a little more physical and present, a little more of like the action that's happening on the ground, right?
Yeah. And
so
go ahead.
So like the combination of these kind of 3 levels of drums alone happening, kind of encapsulate like the action on different levels happening. Like you have like this kind of unknown realm. Then you have like what's happening in the physical present. Then you have the emotional kind of thing, So
I like that.
It's kind of cool, like with just drums
layered.
alone.
Yeah, with just drums, you've layered so much emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's part of the fun, just to experiment with different sounds and try to create these layered cakes, right?
Right. Where do you want to go to next?
Let's go to the low woodwinds.
Okay.
And that starts at 8 seconds. And so now we're getting into the actual like musical motif that I ended up using throughout A Blood Throne. And I was actually inspired. We talked earlier about getting inspiration from other art forms, right?
Yeah.
I was actually inspired by a poem by Yeats, The Second Coming.
Interesting.
It's a very dark poem, and it has a really amazing line at the end. It says, "What rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born." You know, this idea of slouching towards Bethlehem to be born, like this rough beast is slouching towards Bethlehem. So this feeling of like slouching and slow moving insidiousness is what inspired this, you know, motif we hear throughout A Blood Throne. And here it is in the low woodwinds.
Yeah.
And let it play till about, you know, from 8 seconds to 30 seconds.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so you hear this slow moving.
Yeah.
You know, something I
Something-
really love about your style, James, is that you do so much with so little. And there's some tracks where it's boom, boom, you got a lot of things going on in that, you know, because I feel like we're like, add this, add that. But for you, I feel like you were able to kind of say what you wanted to say with just a few sounds, a few instruments here and there, and it was like, yeah, don't overdo it. This is it. And I think you did a very good job with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to get too complicated sometimes. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes it does
Right.
call for that. But, you know, simplicity always trumps, you know, getting too complicated for no reason.
Right.
Now you said something
Sure.
that like just blew my mind. The fact that in your research you came across The Second Coming by William Yeats. Now, was that talk us through that, because you know I don't know that. It sounds like you kind of poured into research and you just started to look for just any kind of inspiration, even outside the script itself, to kind of bring in a uniqueness, a voice. And the fact that I mean, I don't know, I was blown away by the poem and how the poem translated into a sound, and how that sound was kind of a central theme to the entire film.
Yeah, I think just as I was, again, improvising and working on ideas and reading different things, and this poem just, you know, I had read it, you know, or I'd come across it in, I don't know, high school or whatever. For some reason, it just kind of popped into my head. It came out of nowhere. Reminded me of the story of Herod. You know, he was kind of a sort of antichrist.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe he even thought, I know one of the Herods thought that they were the Messiah and were about to try to, you know, so it is this kind of idea of this second coming, a dark second coming, and this slouching towards Bethlehem, you know, and I think I sent you guys that poem when I came across it, because I was like,
Yeah,
oh
I think we did. I think we had briefly discussed it, and I think now that like you
Yeah.
reminded me of it, I'm just like becoming as excited as I was then once again. Because that's something, you know, like Jonathan and I on this podcast, we talk a lot about research. We talk a lot about, you know, that art and creativity comes from the culmination of you as a creative. It comes from everything that's been poured into you. Jonathan and I do a lot of talking about just kind of our past and just where the art that comes out of us comes from, our experiences, what we've witnessed, the highs and the lows, the sads and the happies, you know, the all of these random experiences that we've had over the course of our life, whether it's, you know, in school or just emotional with family, with parents, you know, siblings, and all of this turns into the art, the words that we speak, and the message, the story that we're trying to convey. And here, you know, somewhere high school James was, you know, being taught this poem, and it was some high school assignment that perhaps you were not very fond of at the time. You're like, oh, I got to know about this guy, you know.
But that's like,
and here
that's
it is
the-
coming out. Like,
Yeah, that's the supernatural thing about even God, is that why did that poem get stuck into you so hard
gonna be
enough
used.
that was going to be used
it's gonna be used.
in the future? I mean, was it used any time before then? Was it necessary any time before then? And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, reading poems during school or having these taught to me, you don't know what it'll be used for. You don't even know what God will use it for.
Yeah, it gets pulled out of you, and it becomes that which you then engage the world, with, I love that when you're like, yeah, I don't know, I think I heard it in high school somewhere, I studied it at some point, and it just popped into my mind, and I was like, this is it. This is the piece that's going to be the cornerstone for this, for the score, for the entire original soundtrack. What's going to open up a blood throne, and what it's going to lead the audience into this really dark world. And it did.
Right,
it did exactly that.
Well, and I think when you dream and you wake up and you're like, where the heck did that come from? Like these images or these. You're like, was that inside me? Did this come from like?
What did I do?
You tap into this unconscious, this unconscious part of you. And I think when you're dreaming, and I think when you're engaged in the creative process and you get deep into it and almost into that meditative state, you kind of open up those floodgates and these things begin to come out, and it's like, where did that come from? But that's part of the thrill of the creative process, and one of my favorite parts of it is, oh my God, where did that come from?
The discovery, the journey.
Discovery of it. Yes. And these things are all there, you just have to draw them out, and art does that for you.
Yeah, Jonathan and I say that all the time when we're breaking story, right? And we're looking at a scene, and we're stuck, and we're like, bro, it's there. It's there. It wants to tell us where it wants to go. We're just not seeing it. Yeah. We're not hearing it. We're not seeing it. And the problem isn't the story. It's us right now. So let's walk away, or let's talk about it. Let's do some research. Yes. Let's be inspired to be able to receive what the story's trying to tell us. It's like it's there. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. And along with deadlines pushing you to finish work, there's also a time and place to step back and let it grow. You can't force the growth sometimes. Sometimes you do have to just take a step back, go for a walk, let it go for a day.
Yeah. And that's part of the professional side of you. You got to know, because you're a professional, so you've got to time manage. Yeah. You've got a director, you've got a producer, you've got execs, you've got a whole team, and the composer comes in. I mean, it depends on the film. Studio films, a composer, for example, can come in with the director, and they're talking about it all from the very beginning, because sometimes directors want to direct to a certain theme. And so they'll ask a composer, hey, can you just throw something together, some sort of theme? And I know this happens a lot between, again, Christopher Nolan and Hans Zimmer. Even for Interstellar, he goes to Hans Zimmer and says, this is a story. It's a father-son story is what he told him, even though that's not what it was, because he wanted to pull something out of him that was specifically emotive in that kind of a story. And so he creates... that piano piece, and that piano piece he directs with that. It becomes kind of like what inspires him to start the shoot that day. And so a composer can be brought in at any time, but really the bulk of your work is happening at Picture Lock, right? And so as a professional, there's a team that you're coming in at this very specific time, and now you're racing against the clock to meet the deadlines for a release date. And so you as a professional got to know when I have to hit these deadlines, or I got to step back and let this thing speak to me. And that's where the business of music comes in, and knowing how to manage that, and relationships, and something that you do well, because you know when it's going to be a detriment to the song if you're just forcing time and dates and no, it's got to be here, it's got to be now, it's got to be this, as opposed to let it speak to me, let it breathe.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's a balancing act, right? It's something that you have to, with experience, learn how to navigate between those things. It's not always easy.
No, that's why not everybody goes into the profession, right? So do you want to hit Rhythmic Pursuit? Or the strings?
We can skip that one. So the strings are actually just doubling what we just heard on the woodwinds. Okay. Just adding another layer to the sound, and eventually, as that kind of slouching grows, I add some brass just to give it an extra edge, which we'll hear when we hear the whole track.
Cool.
I felt that was, we're not going through the entire thing, but that was kind of the bones of it, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, as far as like where we are in time and place, I said, you know, maybe we need a touch of Middle Eastern instrument.
Yeah, first century Jerusalem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to give so the audience right away gets a feeling for, you know, geography.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I added these Zumar pipes, which are very nasally and kind of, again, insidious almost, and almost sound like a swarm of locusts or flies or something like that, which I thought suited, you know, the theme and the topic. So we can hear those.
Yeah, let's do it. Right from the beginning?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So, remember that scene in the beginning of The Exorcist where the guy's like in the Middle East? The priest in the beginning of The Exorcist is like in the Middle East, and he sees this. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm remembering it correctly, but I felt like he sees this horrific thing, and like there's this like kind of like swarm of flies or something. It's like something coming that's really
Yeah.
And so it kind of reminded me of that. And so when I actually mixed it, you know, I had it kind of traveling from left to right, and put, you know, obviously have reverb on it, so it sounds kind of otherworldly.
Right.
But you do get that kind of like flavor of the Middle East and that kind of ancient evil.
Yeah, you get the feel of like Revelations, you know, when you're talking about the trumpets. I think it's like the fourth trumpet where it talks about the locusts that come out, you know, out of the abyss.
Oh yeah.
You know, and our afflicting men. Yeah, I saw Jonathan at one point going like, "Oh, you know, get these things out of here." It does. It gives you that feeling like that claustrophobic, like you know, I'm surrounded by this chaos. Yeah,
yes,
and especially when
yes.
you start to mix that, and you mix in, you know, surround sound, and you're going from left speaker, right speaker, and then you feel like front and back that like that's all around you.
Exactly. So it was actually and I thought about taking them out because I didn't want it to be too, you know, on the nose or whatever. But I think they work, especially when you mix them, especially when you mix them in.
Yeah.
With everything else going on.
Yeah.
So we have the insidious, nasty flies. We have the slouching beast towards Bethlehem. We have the intense drums. That's the track.
Yeah. Those taikos that kick in with that sound amazing. They sound
Exactly.
so good.
And we have a little secret sauce which we didn't talk about. But
oh, there it is. What is it? What's this?
Well, we're not going to talk about.
Okay,
that.
all right.
One more thing though, we actually have towards the end of the track this choir effects, this kind of like angelic choir. That comes in at 33 seconds.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that gives like this kind of otherworldly sound, this kind of like this sound is a little more, it's not so dark per se, it's a little more like how the drone was, kind of like the sorrowful, you know, you mentioned Rebecca crying or you know, wailing. Kind of taps into that a little bit. If you're ready to play that,
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so that comes at the end of the track, and it kind of like is a nice segue into the next track.
Yeah, the next
piece
scene,
of music.
actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of used it as a bridge to connect them.
Now, do we have the whole thing put together on here on this list?
Let's hear the whole thing. Yes, it is the alternate.
Zumar Pipes rough mix.
Exactly.
All
yes,
right.
exactly.
Let's do it. Chills every time I listen to that track.
Fun, definitely a fun track to work on. Yeah. And you could hear that brass come in on that slouch that gives it this kind of extra like metallic intensity.
Yeah. Man, there's so much to say about just the, tone that affects mood, right? I mean,
Right,
just like that whole thing, as you're listening to that track, you're like, it puts you in a very specific mood. It's like there are times, for example, that a song elevates, like when a track is just so powerful. You don't necessarily need the visuals, like I know I found myself just like listening to tracks that just put me and bring me to a place when I'm writing, for example, and you and I do that a lot, we'll put on specific scores from specific, films that are usually 9 out of 10 times it's like the soundtrack won an Oscar or something like that, and it elevates this, just it becomes more than just music to fulfill a picture, because it's so well written. It is music that is moving, like moving you.
It can stand alone. It stands on its own, right? Yeah. Which, that's the ultimate. If you can write music that elevates the scene but can also stand alone,
that's it.
Yeah, I hear a lot of times composers say, I want to write something that you don't know. It's just in the background. And that there's times that is necessary, but I feel like all the scores that I know that I come back to my computer and I plug in and I love listening to, just like regular music, I know that they impacted me while I was watching that scene.
Yeah.
And some people would say, oh, you don't want the music to take you out of the scene, but in this particular moment, this sound, the music made me focus on the song but brought me even deeper into the scene.
Yeah.
And it was like it made it in a way where it was enhanced, where it could have been a standalone, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
And some people be like, no, you don't want to do that. I was like, no, the music was amazing.
Yeah.
That's what that's what made the whole scene 20 times better. And it's like the music was its own character.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I mean, look, I'll give you a classic example. Dun dun. Yeah. The moment that you hear that. You hear that and you go, forget the movie. I've heard the song and I now know, like, this is Jaws.
Right.
Everybody knows. Down.
Yeah.
It's about to go down.
Right.
Here he comes.
But that's a moment where the composer now has created something where in and of itself it's become, like you said, you called it a character. It's become something greater.
The leitmotif. Mm-hmm. This motif, this sound represents this character now. And the audience sometimes doesn't even realize it, but that motif comes on and they start getting nervous or they start having an emotional reaction because they know what's about to happen. John Williams, did that all over the place, in Star Wars and in Jaws and.
Yeah, you get those, and then they become a part of our culture. They become a part of, they stand alone aside from the film. Like I'm in my pool. And I'm playing with my kids, and and I'm chasing them around, and all of a sudden I'm going dun dun dun, and and people you don't have to think about Jaws the movie. It's like the song in and of itself has now created
the feeling between
a relationship,
a scene, a story that you've created just with the song.
Yeah, I do this all the time with you. Like whenever we're like doing something fun, we're moving. Like we were moving your house, and all of a sudden you hear me going dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. And you're like, okay, Xavier. Or I'll go dun 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 dun. And I'm telling you, I'm literally without like telling you my mood, I'm singing to you my mood, and you're like, okay, Jack Sparrow, like you're coming in here all lazy. Like I told you, I need your help to move these boxes.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's incredible. Like you said, your kids probably have never seen Jaws.
Never.
But right when you hum that motif, right? It's almost like has gotten into the whole collective unconscious.
Yes.
Like it's in the whole culture. Like everyone knows, even kids know.
Yeah. Kids that have never seen the movie, they're playing. Really, they're playing Marco Polo, and they're all of a sudden they're going into like dun dun, and they don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
They've never seen that movie. Where did that come from?
It's just there. Yeah. It's just there. It's in the ether.
Yeah. I mean, and that happens. I like, for example, Gladiator does that too, where you've got, everybody's the most copied shot, in all cinema history, the hand going through the tall grass, through the wheat,
yes.
and you've got the Enya, like this, the what's her name? Yeah, you've got her, with her vocals in the back, just kind of going through. It's not Enya. I forget what her name is. She's like world famous.
But it's something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so it's like, and you were just humming.
Yeah, it's May It Be. I think it was like,
May It Be. That one, that one is, It's just, it becomes a part of, I don't know, like the zeitgeist, if you will, of like our human experience. Like somehow we're all just connected by this song. It has transcended space and time, and the whole world now can go dun, and I'm coming after you. It's pretty fun. Cool.
Exactly.
So we have this whole section. We were going to go in and talk about a new king, but I think we're kind of running a little bit out of time, so we'll skip that. I do want to talk a little bit about some of your concert stuff, because I know you do concert work, which is so different, for composing for film. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because that has shaped a lot of who you are as an artist as well. Your work with your concert work. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm doing, when I'm writing concert music, which usually is just instrumental, I still like to have some kind of program in my mind, some kind of narrative in my mind to kind of guide me, rather than just, for me, that works better. So even though, when you're writing film, you're writing specifically to a scene, which isn't the case in concert music. I still like to have some idea or something that I was inspired by in the back of my mind that is kind of setting a tone, like you said, or creating a mood that I can kind of go on, that I can kind of work with. So some examples of my concert music that are on my website.
I pulled them up here so we can listen to a brief second if you want to talk to it.
Yeah. So before we get into it, this piece I wrote is called Gravitations, and it's a collection of songs, and each song has to do with something falling and something coming together. Gravity pulling something together, two entities together, like at a certain point in space and time. So one of the pieces is called Meteor.
Yes.
And that's based on the actual meteor strike that happened in Russia in 2014 or 2015. I can't remember exactly what the year was, but it was caught on film, and it was like a very.
It was like smashing glass of a like industrial building. I think it was. I remember seeing that. Yeah. It was like this huge video. Yeah.
Yeah, it hit the earth with the power of like. I forget how many nuclear bombs, and people were on their way to work early in the morning, and it was still kind of dark out, and they're on their way driving to work, regular day, and all of a sudden this thing comes out of the sky and lights up the entire sky, and like it's like this miracle happened, like this incredible thing all of a sudden happened on this kind of random, unusual day. And so when I wrote that piece, Meteor, I tried to capture this feeling of awe, of kind of like you're going about your business on a regular day, and all of a sudden the extraordinary happens.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that example.
I do.
You have that
I do.
example?
Yeah. Let's let's check it out.
So this is the introduction, this is for piano and string quartet.
Okay.
Yeah, so I tried to capture this feeling of being like perplexed or nonplussed or just in awe of like.
Oh, we got another one of your songs there coming in. Okay, got it.
you know, in awe of, so it wasn't like I just wrote this music because this idea, this musical idea came to me. It was kind of inspired by these events.
Yeah.
So sometimes you do just get a musical idea that pops into your head, or a motif that comes out while you're improvising or whatever, and you just build a piece around it, you know. But I find inspiration from having another idea, some kind of program in the back of my mind, at least, that usually, or at least some kind of texture I'm trying to create, or you know, there has to be something to hold on to.
Yeah, and you know, and just real briefly before we kind of go into our final topic, just talking about kind of your experiences, you know, just working with, you know, bringing different musicians together in order to create these concert pieces, and some of your work, you know, like with, because I know you're classically trained in the piano, but when you're working and you're creating these, you know, concertos, you've got your string instruments, and I know, for example, for one of our pieces, we wanted to bring in a string quartet, you know, and you were going to be composing a piece, not just writing the music, but then also just kind of organizing this team together, and just like the collaborative process, just kind of how that, you personally, you know, just some of your experiences in the collaborative process in the film world, and even just in the orchestra, and what what we just heard. Any you know, just any kind of insight into that and into that process at all would be great to just hear about, even if it's just,
you know, when you're at school studying, you make a lot of important relationships, and that's something we forgot to mention.
Yes.
You know, when you're studying film, or you're studying music or art or whatever it happens to be, I mean, you want to go into law, whatever, those relationships that you make at that time a lot of them are going to be lifelong, because these are other like-minded people. These are other people that share the same passion as you do, and you would have never met them if you didn't go to school. You know, this is like where we gather together, right? So that's priceless.
Yeah,
I mean, that's something. And I made I was fortunate to make a lot of great musician friends, and they introduce you to someone, they introduce you to someone else, and over time you build up a network.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to become close with a lot of really incredible musicians, and very professional. They come in and they have their stuff ready to go.
Yeah. And
they're also usually a lot of fun to work with, and very helpful, because if you're writing for an instrument that you don't play necessarily,
right, that you personally haven't mastered yourself as far as feel and touch, and
you don't know all the ins and outs, so you're going to say, look, this is what I want, but does this work for you?
Right.
And to have someone that can be like, maybe if we just tweak this one or two notes, like, it will feel a lot better. And to be cool about that goes a long way, and you're like, absolutely, let's do it. So there is a collaboration that happens between you and the musician also.
That's awesome.
You have to be open-minded and humble, right? You have to be willing to, and flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were really.
Oh, I wrote this down, so this is how it has to be. Like, I don't think it's a good approach.
Yeah, no, we were really blessed on A Blood Throne. Nathan Diaz-Rua, you work with him for sound and mixing, and we work with Nizar.
That was a lot of fun.
Talented singer.
Oh yeah, Nizar's
out of Lebanon.
voice. Oh.
Yes. So it was actually, the sound was very professional. Very at all ends of it. It was just done very well.
Yeah, John Chase mixing along with
it was smooth.
God,
it was very comforting to be like, this one, we got this crew, because we've built it up over time.
Yeah.
And been like, all right, we can really lean on this team.
Yeah.
Well, and we had a blast. We had a blast in the studio.
Some late nights, some long days, but just the entire time you're like, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like we're creating just something that's beyond us.
There's few things more fulfilling, than when your work is exciting you, and your work is, you're working on a project like that, and it's going well, and you're seeing this thing grow. I mean, it's really a gift to be a part of something. Yeah, like
man.
that.
I mean, and look, like, just some of the testimonies that came out as a result of the project in and of itself, and to know that you had a part to play in the transformation of people's lives. Like, I don't know if people realize, man, how impactful stories well told can be for the human experience, in the individual that's engaging in them. Like, I don't know, I could go through just even films that in my life have shaped who I am today as a result of having seen that movie and having seen that story. Like for me, even personally, and this is personal, but like Passion of the Christ, like I saw that when I was in college, and it just changed me. It just changed my perspective on the concept of forgiveness. Like it rattled me, man. And movies can do that, and a Blood Throne and your work, James, on that, and your composition on that was it moved people to that place where they were personally and uniquely changed and transformed forever. And I could go through names. We can go offline and talk about those experiences.
And I just want to mention a little more on that. A lot of people think, well, music is manipulating. Music is controlling, Don't you want an authentic transformation, especially when it comes to, Passion of the Christ affecting you? But one scripture that comes to mind, and it's so beautiful, is when Jesus says to the people, like, do not stop them. Like, these people over here are preaching your name, but they're not one of our disciples. Jesus says to them, don't stop them, because if they're for us, they're not against us. And why these two things tie is because if it's for good, if it's for the purpose of good and knowing God, for instance, in the instance of Passion, if it's drawn you closer, then it doesn't matter if the music is for influence because it's for good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It's going to have like this purpose within it that is going to draw you into that.
Exactly.
Yeah, to
of knowing what forgiveness means, of knowing what love is, of knowing who God is, of knowing of decreasing and letting go of things. I think that's the perfect thing about music, and I think that's the perfect thing that you did, James, with the people on set. And the people who watched the movie, when that music kicked in, it was like, it was changing them for the good. It's like, wow, I need a change in this, or I need to rethink or reevaluate.
They're
myself.
watching the story of King Herod and Antipas. They're watching a failed father-son relationship, and then they're hearing it, right? And they're hearing these scores, and they're hearing the wailing voice of Nizar, it mixed into like these, emotive strings, and they're like, I need to go forgive my dad. Mm-hmm. And that happened. That happened, man. And I need to go reestablish, my relationship with my dad, or with my mom, or with my family. And that is powerful. That's the power of great storytelling. That's the power of great music. And the goal. And the goal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, time for Creator's Tip of the Week. Creator's Tip of the Week. Jonathan, do you got any good tips for us? What you got?
Since this is about sound, a really good tip is a lot of times, for instance, this whole recording system. I mean, I've dabbled with some composition stuff, but sound stuff is one of those things that's like if it is off, if it is wrong in your movie, then it's you'd rather have better sound than better quality footage, because the story will run as long as you can actually hear it. So with this podcast, I want to make sure that we could hear a lot of the elements, being able to hear James clearly, and there's a plugin called SoundFlower. Well, actually, that made him download it.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
You just stole your creative stuff of the week from
SoundFlower
awesome.
allows you to. It's a plugin for both Mac and Windows, which allows you to actually hear your desktop, which is one of the most difficult things with Mac computers. It doesn't allow you to do that. And you figure out, it doesn't have that splitting of lines to try to be able to to record that information. So if you're ever thinking about doing podcasts, if you're ever thinking about trying to go on broadcasting and doing all this stuff, or when it comes to sound, I figured I'd play around with the theme today. SoundFlower. It allows you to be able to record and your desktop audio.
Sweet. That's awesome.
And also go through Zoom conference. Any audio that goes through your desktop, you can record it right through.
Yeah, we're still trying to get our technology all the way down, but all these creative tips are helping us, helping us nail it. All right, cool. So my tip of the week is not sound related, but I did stumble upon this as I was listening to a podcast, and it's called Coverfly. and it's a service that's been out for about a year now, and so it's not brand new, but it's new enough where I hadn't heard about it yet until just recently, until this past week. And Coverfly is really just kind of like an aggregate for great screenplays, and so it puts together the top screenplay competitions, and just kind of, there's a lot of really bad, fake, false screenplay competitions out there that people are just trying to steal your money, and this gathers the best ones, the top ones that actually have a reputation for writers being discovered. And being staffed up, whether it's on a TV series or even into a film, and it's actually pretty cool. They're trying to start their own version of the blacklist. They're calling it the red list, which is similar to like the blood list or the hit list. And basically, it's like if you can get on this list, kind of like a Nichols Fellowship or Austin Film Festival, winner. They're trying to make it so that it has that same kind of a prestige. And they have a grading system, and they grade your scripts, and they help you basically elevate your scripts to a different level. And if it can get a good score, you've got some industry professionals that'll go on this. It's not as powerful or as famous as the blacklist at all, but they're trying to build that kind of a clout so that they can be a more user-friendly, user-based, more available and accessible to other people to be able to like just submit their script, and an unknown can be discovered that way. It's cool. Called Coverfly. It's pretty cool. They boast that they've already, in their year of existing, have already staffed up like 9 individuals. It might not seem like a lot, but remember, the first 4 months of 2020 haven't been the friendliest to the film industry, and so really they've only had about 8 months of legitimate existence, and in that time they've gotten like 9 people, quote unquote, discovered, if you will. So basically either optioned or scripts purchased. So Coverfly, it's a pretty cool. I don't think it's an app. It might be an app. There might be an app. If there is, I haven't downloaded it yet. Right now, I'm just on the website itself, and it's really self-explanatory. It's really cool. You set up your profile, you go in there, and you can start getting notes. You can get coverage for your writing, all of that good stuff. Something that we'll probably use.
Cool.
Coverfly.
I like it.
Yeah. James, I don't know. Do you by any chance have a creator's tip of the week?
Yeah. I think circling back to what we spoke of earlier, which is not to neglect the classics, whether you want to be a writer, an artist, a musician, see what came before, see why these things have survived the test of time, and study them, because it's just going to elevate your game, and it's just going to give you new insights. And also to find inspiration from other art forms. Go to museums, go to the opera, go to, if something makes you uncomfortable, like takes you out of your comfort zone, don't be afraid to explore it and to check it out, because there's always, learning opportunities, and find inspiration from those other creative outlets. As much as possible.
That reminds me of my uncle, Miguel. He's an artist, and he does a very good job at finding inspiration off of many things. He'll just like all of a sudden, if you look, I don't know, if a lot of people don't know, but there's been some random pictures he's been posting on Facebook. And what it is he stops and he just takes a picture of something that has some sort of pattern that really touches him, like really affects him. Yeah. So like there was like he was walking, and like all of a sudden some like powder fell on the floor, and the powder formed inside of the crevices of the pavement, and he stops and he takes pictures, and you'll see his feet at the bottom of it. Yeah. And I've looked at all of them, and I'm like, I love these. These are awesome, and they've inspired him. And this little things like that, which is what you're saying, James. It's like you don't know what you come across that will inspire you to, think of something else in the future.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's like the overlap of chaos and order, like where the chaos and order come together. Yeah. It's like he's capturing that moment.
Yeah. You see the
really
morning frost, and it's like this beautiful pattern,
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, guys, thank you so very, very much for joining us on The Harvest. James, thank you for taking time out of your morning. I know you're on vacation. I'm sure you're family's like, can we come outside now? You're out on the deck. So I appreciate you taking an hour to talk to us and to just kind of bless this audience with your insight, your art, your passion, and your storytelling through music. Thank you. If you guys ever want to hear any of his stuff, it's all available on jamesglindsay.com. That's James, GLINDSAY.com. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me on Twitter at xgarcia.
And I'm at Jonathan Garcia.
James, do you do any social media, any Twittering or IGN or anything like that?
I definitely have to step up my game.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram.
Okay.
James G Lindsay Music.
Cool.
And the usual suspects.
Sweet. All right. Awesome. So like Facebook, they can find you on there.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. But check out his work. He's got a ton of stuff on his website, and he's taking commissions, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Always.
Special thanks to our producer. We actually have a new producer in studio today. We're super excited to have Chelsea Cowie in studio. She's behind the scenes, just kind of puppeteering this whole thing, writing giving us notes as we're going along. So thank you. We had an awesome episode. You've seen some of our episodes before. She produced the Actors Roundtable and the Crew Roundtable episode, and so you're going to see a little bit more of her creative input into some of these episodes. We're really excited to have her. For any questions that you may have for us at the Harvest Podcast, you can reach us at info@mountharvest.com. If you have any questions for James, you can reach us at info@mountharvest.com, and we can forward those questions to you, James. That way, we don't clog your inbox. But yeah, reach us at info@mountharvest.com. We'll forward that stuff. And if you want to support the work that we're doing here, you can reach us at patreon.com/The Harvest Podcast. We really, we would appreciate the patronage and the support. Thank you guys.
Yeah, please like, share, and subscribe.
Join us at thepatreon.com/The Harvest Podcast for some BTS footage of our cinema production life.